So automated testing is something you should consider adding to your projects. But there are different kinds of automated testing. And one popular kind of testing about which this course is mostly is unit testing. But what are unit tests? Well, let's start with units. What are units? In the end, units are the building blocks of your app, and ideally, these are the smallest possible building blocks. Now, what are application building blocks? Typically, functions or classes, or if you're working with a framework or a library like React or Angular, then a component could also be a building block. But it's not just about that. It's about functions in general. And typically, indeed, if we speak of a unit, we mean a function. So a unit is basically, or in most cases, a function, or also quite often a class in your overall project code. And all these units combined make up your application. So in our application, we have multiple functions and classes working together, and therefore our application is in the end made up of all these functions and classes, and therefore of all these units. So an app is a combination of all these units, and the idea behind unit testing is that we write tests for these individual units that test these units standalone, and if all units were tested, then the overall app should work. Though we typically back this up with another kind of test, integration tests, about which you'll learn as part of this course as well. And whenever we make a change to our code, we can run all our tests again, and therefore it's easy to detect whether a change in a certain part of our code, a certain part of our project, suddenly broke or changed some other units as well. If we change something in file A, and that has some indirect influence on another file or another function in another file, then with help of unit tests, if we wrote tests for all our units, and if we wrote the right tests, we will find out if we accidentally break something. In addition, even if it's not about such cross effects, even if we're working on a piece of code and we're changing something in an existing function, our existing unit tests might tell us whenever we accidentally break this function or a certain aspect of that function. And that is what unit testing is all about. It's about writing tests that test different expected behaviors of our core building blocks of our applications, typically of our functions and classes. But why would we add such unit testing? Well, if we do, and if we test all these different units, all these different building blocks that make up our application, then we can avoid endless amounts of manual testing, because again, we have all these predefined unit tests, which we can execute whenever we make some important code change. So therefore, we can easily test our entire code base by running some automated tests instead of performing a bunch of manual tests, which of course takes way longer. And it's way easier to cover our entire code base, or almost our entire code base, with unit tests, because of course we can add as many unit tests for as many units, so as many functions as we want to. And again, whenever we then change some code, we can run all the unit tests to find out if there are some effects between those different units and if we broke something. And as you will also learn throughout this course, and as you also learn in my Clean Code course, in case you also took that, adding unit tests to your project will also force you to write cleaner and better code, because testing is easier if your main code is clean and written in a good way. But I will come back to that throughout this course, of course. So that's unit testing, and that's what units are. And this course is primarily about unit testing. But unit testing is not the only kind of testing we can perform.